Well, um, hey, um, Carol, it's good to see you too. Go Beam. All right.
All right, I think everyone's getting in, so I think it's safe to start it off.
Yeah.
Morning, everyone. I'm Paul Menard, Marketing Manager here at Atombeam. I'll be your host for today's webinar, Advancing Data Efficiency, Updates on Pilots, Partnerships, and Prototypes. Thanks for joining us. We're thrilled to bring you some nice updates at Atombeam, including our work with Neurpac, Neurcom, LCM, and Entrust. As usual, if anything comes up during the chat, please feel free to drop your questions. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Charles to do some brief introduction, and we'll take it away. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Say thanks. I really appreciate that. It's been a little while, and it's sort of good to at least virtually see everybody. And thanks for signing in, taking the time. Today, I think we already kind of tell the story with the title of today's webinar. It's basically just a general update. Usually we have a panelist in which I'm digging into some particular aspect of the tech. But today, instead, we're going to have Bill Neville. And Bill is with Entrust, which is well, he'll explain it in just a moment. But I think you'll find his discussion interesting and something that you very well may not be aware of. And then today, I'm going to dig in and we'll go through. I've put together a short deck to talk about where we are and what we're doing, and some very interesting developments on the the product formerly known as the LCM, which I'll explain why I'm saying that in just a few minutes. So, without further ado, Bill, if you would take it away. Right.
Okay, yeah.
Good job.
Thanks, Charles. So as Charles mentioned, my name is Bill Neville, and the company I work for is called the Entrust Group. And what we do, what we are, is we are custodians and record keepers of what are called self-directed retirement accounts or self-directed IRAs. And the way I first got connected to Atombeam, interestingly enough, was about a year ago, right around this time last year. We were at a tech event in which we had a table there. And I also got up and did a quick, I had like 10 minutes to do a presentation about self-directed IRAs and specifically about how one can invest in digital currencies inside a retirement account. And it was just a really quick overview, which is kind of what I'm going to do for you guys today. And then they came up to me afterwards and asked me a few questions specifically around can one invest in like a private fund or a private company, private equity inside a retirement account, which one can. And so that's what I'm going to largely talk to you about. So when you have a retirement account, whether it's a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, SEP IRA, 401k, pension plan, whatever type of retirement account you have to have that account with a financial services company who acts as custodian of that account. And most people's custodian is a bank or a brokerage firm like a Merrill Lynch, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard, companies like that. And those firms do two things that's different from us as a self-directed custodian. One, they are a fiduciary, which means they give you advice. So if you want to invest in something, they have a fiduciary obligation to essentially do due diligence on that investment and look into it and then tell you whether they think it's a good investment or not. So they provide advisory services. And the other thing is, this is the main thing, is that they're typically only willing to hold exchange traded stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So they'll have, like, if you have an account with Merrill Lynch, Charles Schwab, whatever, you can invest in the stock market, or they might have a list of like funds from Putnam and Vanguard and all these different companies that you can invest in. And then again, they'll give you advice about which funds you can have a conversation with them, talk about what your risk tolerance is and what your goals are, what your age is, and then they'll recommend or advise certain things for you to invest in. But all those things fall in this what we call Wall Street assets, right? They fall under the stock bond mutual fund. But in reality, within a retirement account, the IRS says you can invest in almost anything you want inside a retirement account. You can invest in real estate, like you could buy a rental property as an asset inside your retirement account. You could invest in private companies or private funds. You could invest in precious metals. You can invest in promissory notes, like you can use your IRA to be a lender. You can invest in, I mentioned earlier, digital currencies. We had somebody invest in cattle, in a racehorse. Like you can invest in almost anything you want inside a retirement account, but you have to have your account with a custodian who is willing to hold those types of non-traditional investments. And that's where the Entrust Group comes in. So we are what's called a self-directed retirement account custodian. So with us, one, we're not going to provide the advisory services, right? So what makes it self-directed is that you have to find the investment, you have to do your own due diligence, you have to do your own research and determine whether it's a good investment for you. And then two, if it's a non-traditional investment, it's something other than stocks, bonds, or mutual funds that you want to invest in, you're allowed. But you need a custodian like the Entrust Group. You need a self-directed custodian. So we're not new to this. This is not a new thing. Ever since ERISA went into effect in the mid 1970s, you've always been allowed to hold non-traditional assets inside a retirement account. We've been in business since 1981. We have approximately 25,000 account holders. We hold about $5 billion in investor assets. Like this is not a new thing, but not a lot of people know about it because most people, as I mentioned, their account is with a bank or brokerage firm, and those banks and brokerage firms have no incentive to tell you about this because it's not in their business model. They're not willing to hold most private equity or notes or real estate and things like that. So that's kind of like the overview. There are some additional, that we could really get into the weeds in terms of, how it all works. And there are things that are prohibited, like you have to be for investment purposes only, like if you wanted to buy a rental property, it can't be for personal use. But we'll can give you all my contact information if you want to get more into the details about that. But one of the things with Atombeam, and they have since referred a couple people to us who have invested in their offering using their retirement account. And so because Atombeam's offerings, you're not going to, if you went to Charles Schwab or Fidelity or Merrill Lynch, they're going to say, we can't hold that asset, right? Because they would have to do all kinds of due diligence on that. And it's likely that they're just simply not going to be a big enough fund to warrant that kind of effort they have to put into. But in our case, since we don't have to do the research or due diligence, if you want to invest in one of their offerings or any non-traditional asset using their retirement account, you just have to open an account with us, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, SEP IRA, whatever type of account, fund that account, transfer rollover money to your account with us, and then you instruct us to make the investment, and we will process your investment into whatever it is that you want to invest in, including any offerings that Atombeam has. You're muted, Charles.
Sorry. Bill, you already have a question here that someone wants your contact info.
Yeah. I'll give it to you now. I think, Atombeam has, like Charles has all my contact, so potentially can send it out at the end. But my email, we'll start with that, is my first initial and my last name. So B Neville, like exactly as you see it there for Bill Neville, B Neville at the Entrust Group, THEENTRUST group.com. So B Neville at theentrustgroup.com. And then my phone number is 510-587-0950. And my extension is 237. That's we're in Oakland, California. So 510, again, 510-587-0950, extension 237. And I see Nadine put my email address in the chat there.
Yeah, great. And you do have a question here. So can you transfer investments from Start Engine and so forth, MISA, Atombeam, MISA Robotics, et cetera, into a self-directed IRA?
You could transfer it if it's already held inside a retirement account. But if it's an asset that you already personally own, like that you've made in your own name, because when you make an investment inside your retirement account, it's done in the name of your retirement account. So with us, the name of your retirement account would be the Entrust Group for benefit of, or we shorten that to FBO, the Entrust Group FBO, your name and account number, right? So it's in the name of your IRA. So if you're already holding it in your personal name, then the answer to that is no. You can't just transfer something you own personally as an asset into your retirement account. You have to use cash that's in your retirement account and invest it into Atombeam. So if that's something you wanted to do, here's like the way you would have to do that. You'd have to have a conversation with Atombeam where basically you sell your investment back to them, they refund you the money, and then you turn around and make the investment inside your retirement account. So you would have to unwind it as a personal investment and then turn around and reinvest it as an asset inside your retirement account using your IRA funds.
And that's if you have it in your own name
That's
versus,
if you have it already in your personal name. Yeah. But if
right.
you have it, I mean, if you already have it in a retirement account, you've already done this and you want prefer to transfer it to Entrust, you can do that. That would be what's called an IRA to IRA transfer. But I have a feeling that's not what you meant.
Yeah, that's probably not the question. Right. Yeah. Okay. Terrific. Thank you, Bill. And feel free to add any more. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll be sticking around. I'm gonna, go off camera and all that stuff, but I'll stick around. So if we have more questions at the end, I'll be here to take those.
Great. Great. Thanks. Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah. And if anybody has any more questions, just fire them in the Q&A part, and we'll get them handled. So just really quickly, you might be wondering who the other folks are here, and that's one is Pam Dodge. Pam is our VP Marketing. She's here as a panelist if needed to answer QA, and also Nadine Alam, who's our Chief of Staff. And so, part of the a lot more robust group we have now at Atombeam, which is, a transformed company. And I know, like, probably some of you are wondering how come I'm not hearing from Charles every day and everything. Part of that is just we are working our butts off here to do the things that makes this into a real company with real products. And I got to tell you, that's a lot of unglamorous, get things done kind of stuff. Very intense. And to that end, I'm going to, not walk through a deck here that kind of tells everybody about what we've been up to and the status of things. And this mysterious PCM versus LCM that is, I think, transformative, as I think you'll see. So, without further ado, here we'll move on and do the deck. Okay, so first of all, uh, both for the sake of updating everybody and to let everyone know what it is we're working on and what the status is of the current status of the company. So this is the kind of show everything about the company, slide that I use a lot. First thing to mention is the TAM. So one of our, investors is a big time Perplexity and other LLM user, and he asked the question, what is the TAM for the company now, the total addressable market? And we had been trying to be conservative and reasonable and what we could count and so forth. And we were getting, 80, 90 type $billion. According to Anthropic, it's more like $1 trillion. Simply because if you look at it, the potential impact that could impact everything, then it kind of adds up to a lot. So that's our new number. And I think, as a lot of you know, we've closed on a 20 million crowdfunding and a $2.5 million sort of alongside Reg D deal, which adds up to 35 million along with prior raises. We still have 2 active phase 2 contracts, and the patents keep piling up. So, and I forgot to update it over there, but we do have our 3 products, and now called PCM, which I'll fix here, and still really, really active with Ericsson and Viasat as well as others, but those are the two that are really cranking. And the team continues to expand. So, all right. So, at any rate, so big question for most here is like, what have we done lately? Um, the LCM, as I mentioned, is now going to be called the PCM, and I'll explain that. We have a bunch of pilots that are either started or starting. There's with commercial customers. There's some pretty big time stuff going on with DoD. Some things have gotten gummed up in the works because of Dodge, and so that has got people running scared and slowing things down. And so um, I'm not sure where that all comes out, but we've got some really great stuff working as well that is so compelling we think it'll punch through. And a lot of sort of the unglamorous grunt work of making Neurpac into the kind of product that needs to be, which is like solid as a rock. We're talking about major companies using this technology, and it's a very heavy duty thing, and you can't be with this kind of technology, you can't be telling a major oil company, well, it's almost perfect. No, it's got to be perfect. And so that kind of effort takes a lot of oomph, a lot of really serious people doing a lot of serious work. So really quickly on sort of where we are with various things. So there's a big 30 billion plus oil equipment maker. We signed the PO, we're cranking up the pilot right now. That we could, I mean, if you think about that, any one of these things could turn into a massive deal, many millions of revenue to us. But we've really seen big time resonance with oil and gas. So there's a lot of emphasis on that with our sales efforts. And there's just several oil and gas companies and oil and gas equipment companies that are working with us right now. We have a 400 million Saudi company that is already testing data right now. They are the number one supplier to Saudi banks for ATM stuff, and we've always thought ATM would be really great because there's tons of data moving around. But they have all these other things that they want to use it for. So they're both a distributor and a customer for us. Then there's this, I don't know if they're the biggest mining company in the world, but they've got to be one of the biggest, is they plan to start a pilot. And I'm just sort of starting in here. The list, there's 90, I think 90 some, active opportunities that we're pursuing right now. So it's very active, and we are really happy with the VP. I'm sorry, the CRO who's now working with us now. He's Steve Collins, super organized, very aggressive, and we're seeing things really rolling now. Um, Talking a little about the channel partners. So Ericsson is, along with Viasat, are the two most active, as I said. So actually, Pam, talk about this key event that's next month that we're doing for Ericsson.
Sure. Can you hear me, Charles?
Yep.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I am participating next week. Ericsson has their partner summit, and we've been one of only 12 that have been selected as a key sponsor. And this consists of over 300 channel partners who attend this, as well as all of Ericsson's executives, over 114. And what our goal there to do, as well as they're asking us to promote that joint solution. And again, we were chosen because our solution, heavily competing against their key competitor, Nokia, shows that they can eliminate congestion by putting in the Atombeam product.
Right, which they've obviously tested a lot because they're not going to go tell their customers to use it if they don't feel pretty confident about it. And then Viasat, they're talking about integrating us into some standard offerings of theirs. We've opened discussions with one of Ericsson's competitors. We're stepping carefully there because, we're getting big time commitment from Ericsson, although, we'd like to see money on the table from those guys too. And we have one of the big three wireless companies. It's pretty early, but we're getting a lot of enthusiasm from those guys. There's a big South African tech company. I don't know how many now we're up to in sort of channel partners, either active or in early discussions, but it's serious. There's a lot of people who see the value of what we're doing. And just to address quickly, DoD, I've talked in the past about Link 16. Link 16 is just a quick backgrounder. That's the data link that the US uses, all the allies use. It's in everything. It's in airplanes and ships and tanks and on handhelds and all this stuff. It's super slow. It's basically dial-up speed, like 25 kbps. And you're talking about aircraft like this F-35s here trying to use a data link that can probably send under part of a percent of the data they're generating. And so it's a huge issue. And so the right people, and which is this Navy unit called PMA 101, are engaged at the top levels now. And so we think that could be really cool. And there's also we're in discussions now with one of Admiral Becker's subordinate commands, who's basically handles all the other kinds of data links that the Navy uses. And on Neurcom, we got derailed by Dodge. We had a 600K extension that was approved, but before it got signed, it came off came off, so we didn't get that, and now we're doing an unpaid extension because we think there's still tons of enthusiasm there, and they want to move us into getting to phase 3. And we've been working with synthetic aperture radar image data, but this new one is for thermal, and it's for some super secret thing that we don't know who the ultimate customer is, but they want us to get to phase 3 like lickety split, and so that's why we're continuing to work without additional funding. And I hope not the same story here with the Space Force, the SDA, this part of the Space Force called the Space Development Agency. And we had there an $800,000 extension that was approved, but they've added another layer of approvals, and now we're still waiting for that. So we're hopeful that that will actually go through, because they recognize that they're moving Link 16 data, and they recognize that the Space Force, that the warfighters really need a lot more data. I mean, it gets them a lot more specificity and what's going on and targeting data and all that stuff. And if you have a lot more data to work with, it can really help the warfighter in the field. And so we're doing everything we can there. And we think it's still okay, but I can't tell you yet. And in terms of other stuff, I mean, there's a bunch of things. So we have a couple of proposals that are pending. We're about to submit something called a TACFI, which is an Air Force program that basically says if you guys the company puts up X dollars, and the max is 1.9 million, then the Air Force, will put up 1.9 million. And it's a program that's really liked because, the company has to have some skin in the game. And the fact that you are proposing this means that you've raised this money, and there's lots of companies that, that would otherwise try to get it, but they haven't raised it or they can't do it, whatever. And so it makes it a little less competitive. So we're feeling pretty good about that, the potential there. Not done and not even submitted yet, but we're feeling pretty good about, you know, we understand that world pretty well now. We also, through Admiral Becker, have set up a meeting with the Chief of Naval Research on the PCM, which we're going to discuss in a moment. But so advances in terms of Neurpac, what are we doing here? How are we advancing the ball? So as I mentioned before, this performance of Neurpac has to be like absolutely rock solid. You can't have bugs, you can't have problems. It's got to be like Amazon Web Services back end. No one would question whether that works because we're talking about moving the most essential data in it for big companies, over their networks, and they're not willing to experiment. They're not willing to have anything go wrong, period. And so that takes some heavy duty guys, that people that are working really hard on this thing and testing and doing all these tweaks and changes and fixes and rewrites and you name it. It also, key thing, has to be capable of scaling. You can't sort of hope it works. It has to be able to work no matter how much load you put on it. And so one of the things you do is you keep moving and moving and moving until it breaks. You keep putting more and more data through, and you see what happens. And so, you know, we found an issue, and now it's fixed. But there always could be more, and so we keep hammering on that point. And another thing that's key here is making it really simple and quick to implement. You can't hand guys you know, code that is like kludgy or requires a lot of the command line interface and all that stuff. It's got to be a few clicks and you're ready to roll. And so we're there on that. I mean, I think it's under a couple of minutes to set up a connection, and it's getting better all the time. So the more automated we can make that whole thing, the faster and more, customers we can sign up. And then security, a huge issue. You can't sign up these big companies unless you can prove that you're compliant with these basically security protocols. One is called SOC 2, and that's kind of the commercial version, and CMMC is the the DoD version. So those things are critical, and so we have a part-time CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, and that that person, Paul Menard, Paul, not Paul, Paul Menard, another Paul, is working with us very closely to get us up and running in that. We also will need tech support people. So far, we're getting along without that. We're going to bring them on the minute we need them, though, at least one, and then work through it. Um, Another thing is it takes time to build the confidence of the customers. When customers, these big companies, they don't want to put their stuff into and this is true with every startup, they don't want to put their essential data and operations and build around you, and then you're gone. So it's an issue that, it's not an issue obviously we can engineer around or anything. We just have to give them reassurance over time. And then I've mentioned this before, I think, private cloud. So right now, if someone uses our SaaS, our software as a service, then they're sending data from the field to our cloud, and then we hand it off to their cloud. But we need to make it so that we have a private cloud, which means that essentially our software can be implemented on their cloud. So it goes directly from their gadget in the field to their cloud and not go through us. So that's on the roadmap as a key thing. And, I don't know if it's coming out this year, but that's definitely something that gets priority. And then also, if you really, really want to be big, you've got to be in chips. And so that means that Ericsson, for example, would take would license a chip, buy a chip from us, would license it with our or would buy a chip that has our license to use Neurpac on it, and then it would be just put on their board. I mean, I was at a satellite conference a couple of weeks ago, and we had the same question over and over. Do you have a chip? Now we can quickly, no, I shouldn't say quickly. We should be able to get it into what's called an FPGA in a reasonable period of time. It isn't, like they're field programmable gated arrays. That's what it stands for. But what they are is a chip that you can program and then you can change things. When you finally get down the road, and this is like a 2-year, multi-million dollar, like $25 million exercise, you finally get it in the actual circuitry, and it's all optimized around Neurpac, then it can be what's called an IP core, and a intellectual property core, which means it can be put on somebody else's chip or put into a chip that's a dedicated chip called an ASIC. Um, so that, that's how you really get to be in billions of things. And that's how the world will have to, if the world had access to an ASIC, it would be on lots of things pretty quickly, I think. But you got to walk before you can run. And all the things that we're doing in terms of, making it rock solid and scale and test and this and that, those are the things you got to do first. And then when you get to that, now we ramp up and we really start, working harder on this chip instantiation. So now we're going to talk about what we're now calling the PCM, which is, in a lot of ways, it's a different architecture than how anybody historically has thought about generative AI. It's a really new idea, and it does use NERPAC. It does use code words to make it small and efficient, but it's beyond that because it's a rethink of how you do generative AI to make it easier, make it more accessible, and all that. So let's review, shall we? So what if, just a few years ago, you wanted to research something, a question? So you could go to a library, or, this before internet was a big thing and you had lots of access to stuff. You go you go to a library and you do some research. You take out some books and you read and you put the things together and you think through the questions and then you find your conclusions. But you are the one doing all this stuff. You went to the library, you went through the books, you synthesized everything and came up with your conclusions. But it's ultimately limited to what are your skills and how much time do you have and how big of a library. So that evolved to the internet, right? And so in the internet, now suddenly you have access to everything. Um, basically any human knowledge is there somewhere, but it's really hard to find, exactly what you're looking for. And so that's why search engines became sort of like so critical and why Google is so giant, because it can help you find what you need. So you're not sort of mucking around in the library. You're in charge. You're able to find what you need. Now that's one thing. Now you've found it, but you're still doing the putting things together, putting the ideas together, processing it, concluding. It's a giant library, but you still have to do the thinking. So that's why generative AI is such a big leap. And if I like the sort of menacing look on that robot. So at any rate, but it's more than just, a giant library with easy ways of finding what you're looking for. It's taking it's able to draw on all that stuff, but it's now not only able to do that, it can also do the thinking for you. It can synthesize all this information, including things that you didn't think about looking for. And it adds a whole different set of dimensions. And the reasoning models add even more. Um, they're really, a big advance. The DeepSeek R1 and the O1 from OpenAI. But it still has limitations because they're not persistent and they're getting better, but they don't they don't retain something that is specific to you for very long, because you run out of tokens, the ways it remembers things. And it's not, though they aren't personalized to you. They're general, they're like accessing a library whenever you need and asking particular questions or asking for information whenever you need it. But it doesn't retain that kind of learning. So it's not personal to you. It's not persistent in the sense that if you if you come in and you have a session and then you have another session, but your tokens you've exceeded the number of tokens, the way it remembers things, then you're not going to be able to take it, any further. It's going to forget about what you were talking about. So that sort of says, okay, why are humans different, better? What is the difference between an LLM and a human? And so you'd say, okay, yes, we still have access to all this information. But one of the things that we can do is we can generalize experience. So when we say, um, okay, I I'm allergic to cats or I'm allergic to this cat. And we can generalize and say, I'm allergic to cats, and I might even be allergic to other animals too. So that's generalizing and based on thinking through things. And part of that is sort of the executive function, that is the orchestration of all these different things you have going on in your brain. So and we can be infinitely persistent so long as we are alive and we don't have dementia or something. We can learn and we can remember things and we can develop relationships because we have this sort of constant association and remembering of people and having you know having a relationship with somebody that can be very deep. um, but all this is controlled by this executive function that controls the thinking processes, the different parts of your brain that do different things to put it all together. Um, and so that brings us to the persistent cognitive machine, or PCM, which is what we have now, and it's advanced on the LCM. So everybody remembers the LCM. The difference there was we were using code words to substitute for using language. And we're still doing that, but here the difference is using um, we're using the existing infrastructure that's out there already, reasoning models, LLMs, that have these gigantic resources available, but we're using those as kind of the chips, as the components of the PCM. And so because of that, and we built a structure on top of it, we can be persistent forever, just like a human. And we can generalize. We can sort through things and say, that's worth remembering and that's not. Um, it can think. and it can learn and it can retain that learning. And so when, and here's another cool thing actually is because it can retain and learn and all that, it can actually operate on what it is you're asking about and thinking about outside of the four walls of your interaction with it. So, in other words, if you shut off an LLM, it's done. It moves on, it's moved on to the next thing, and it doesn't do anything to anything that you interacted about when you were, when it, until you log back on again. Now, this one's different. It is holding on to that information and munching on the question that you are pursuing, the question, whatever it is you're interested in, or just your hobby or whatever that you want to know about. Um, and so, because of all that, it can build a relationship with a person, with a machine that it gets to know, like, what if it was like an Air Force UAV or whatever. And another thing is it's super light and small. It can fit on your phone and operate on your phone, which is really cool. It's not to say, and it can be disconnected because of that. Like if you interact with a Gen AI on your phone, you're actually just interacting with a cloud. It's not doing things on your phone, in terms of the actual computation. Now that is starting to change. There's getting to be more small LLMs out there. So that's a big emphasis going forward because the resource utilization of LLMs is gigantic, as I think probably everyone knows. So the structure of this thing, of the PCM, is really around thinking. It's around thought. And so what it's doing here is the small LLM, we small part, and the PCM executive is all this stuff put together. But we have sort of small LLM or small LCM, you know, down here on this on in sitting in on your phone. And it's develops expertise around things that you're interested in, and I just picked some stuff at random here to talk about. But you know, whatever, it's golf or not the Niners or whatever. All that stuff is stuff that it develops expertise on because it's interacting with you, and it draws on the power of these giant reasoning model in the cloud. So it could draw on like whatever, on Llama or on ChatGPT or whatever, and become smarter on those subjects and think of things that you didn't even occur to you to ask. Um, and then you can collaborate, if you want to, with others who have those same questions, same areas of interest. It might be you're a math professor researching some math question, or you're just, you know, love poodles and you want to interact with other people about poodles. And then as the users collaborate on things, the whole thing gets smarter and it feeds your own LLM, your own little, version of an LCM really, on your phone. And then that generalized information gets sent down so that the big reasoning model gets smarter itself. So it's learning from all this interaction. So this is really revolutionary, and it's hard to express it because it's so complicated. But the idea really is, instead of like needing to train a model, the giant model, more with saying, okay, I'm feeding in the latest, medical journals, it's also able to learn through interacting with humans, and interacting with machines that might be a robot in a manufacturing site that's learning, okay, it's inefficient for me to do it this way, and here's a new way that can be more efficient, that kind of thing. So, really, the question really is, why is this a different thing? In practical terms, for what people really would need and what they do every day. So, really, when you think about it, I mean, not too many people actually use LLMs with any frequency. they're mostly the people that do so are engineers and scientists, people who write code, people who are researching drugs or whatever. But this is going to be different. It's going to know you, and it's going to be your sidekick and your expert. And it's going to know things that about the things that you're interested in that doesn't occur to you. And it's going to help you sort of in your daily life. And we think that that makes this thing a lot more potentially popular. And not only that, there's huge implications around DoD. And so this can become your day-to-day companion. It's something that can help you with your job, with your interests, with um, whatever it is. It can become your boyfriend or your girlfriend. I mean, there people are doing that, right? But this would hold on to who you are and as you evolve and everything. So, and one of the cool things too is it's a really quick go to market. Um, we can put together a web app, then a phone app, and compared to Neurpac and Neurcom, which have to be built into things and sold to giant companies, this is like anybody can download it and start clicking on it. We may want to go there and partner with a broadband company or a big telco or something and make this something they can add into their suite of services. So, and just to really quickly mention, so the ultimate end game with it that AI is heading to, and it's not there yet, is called Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI. AGI is, they think it'll be around 2030, as some people say 2026, some people say 2040, but it's not too far away either way. But it's hitting human level intelligence. And it's also being able to think abstractly, to have, you know, like to just have common sense like a human, but to be able to be very broad and adapt to things and so forth. That's why, since current AI doesn't do that, that's why they call it weak or narrow AI. And we think this could be progress to that point, scary or not. Um, and this is like this guy, Ray Kurzweil, who's a um, very well-known writer and futurist who works at Google. And he believes that everybody is going to be part machine in the future. And this could be a key part of it. That is to say, the AI, and we think the PCM could be an element of that. So, that being said, I'm happy to address the questions. Anybody want to fire those off? Paul?
Awesome. Thank you, Charles and Bill. Great updates. Yeah, we did have a couple of questions come in throughout the webinar, so let's take a look. So first question here, Charles, if you wouldn't mind taking this one, is about establishing the network. Are you establishing a network standard to support the product, or is the appliance simply a plugin of the existing client's network infrastructure?
Definitely the second, because what we're doing is we're dealing with the data before it gets sent anywhere. So instead of sending this form of the data, it's sending a different structured, but the same information, but a different structure of the data. So if I have like, all I'm doing, it's like you could ask the same question if you said, okay, um, I'm going to translate this English into French before we send it, and then translate it back to English when it gets to the other end. Same idea, except that in our case, obviously, we're making it way smaller.
Thank you. Another question here. A little while ago, you mentioned there may be a competitor with regard to the LCM PCM. I think you said you would not know until the summer. Any new developments on that?
Yeah, no, we don't know of anything. That's not to say that, like we're actually, we're going to bring in a super expert who really knows that market well to make sure that we're we're there, that we know everything that everybody else is doing, because this freaking thing, this AI stuff is moving like, every week. That being said, we think we have something really cool. And by the way, the reason I can talk about it is there are patents that have been filed on all this stuff. So we think it could be a really big deal. But, I got to tell you, even if there's something that's similar, it comes out now, comes out later, that doesn't mean that we can't still have a pretty bang crazy great product. I mean, it can be a big deal irrespective of that. I mean, we're used to living in a world in which nobody competes with us, right? Because nobody has a Neurpac out there. And I mean, there's some kind of Neurcom competitor things because you're talking about squeezing down video or something like that, but not Neurpac. And so we can't live in a world in which we expect to never have a competitor for anything. But that being said, you know, we want to know what's out there and be very careful to how we market it and making sure everybody gets it and all that. So
Thank you. Is there any chance of a big company financing an ASIC in return for licensing?
yeah, an ASIC. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we definitely, I mean, so there's a very big chip company that I haven't mentioned here. So they're not a formal partner, but we are going to I have a discussion with them today, and we'll see, where that goes. But I think it could be something that you're absolutely right, can make a ton of sense because if you're a chip company, your goal is to sell chips. And if you have a chip that everybody wants, well, that's good. So we think that's a decent possibility. I don't want to advertise it. It's done. It's not. It's just something that we're now starting to serve up and get people to talk about.
No, I think that covers most of them. Did a really
Okay.
good job kind of covering it throughout the webinar. Let me take a quick look, see if anything new came in.
Did you look at the chat too?
Take a look. Yeah, we talked about the network already. I have another one here. Is this something that you can monetize this year? Is it going to be
Ah,
sold to individuals or is it going to?
yeah, from Craig. Yeah. I'm reading what you wrote, Craig. Yeah, I got to tell you, I think this freaking PCM thing is could be like huge. I mean, because the point I was trying to get everyone to see was that you can you can have you can, I mean, you dive into an LLM when you want to drill down on a question you've got. Okay, I've got a research project or whatever. This could be like big time significant because this becomes your handy dandy um, you know, person that you are, I shouldn't say person, but your handy dandy friend, your companion, your expert, that's going to be big. I think huge, because people will actually use it a lot, I think, and as opposed to being something you just go to with an occasional question. Um, so yes, and the idea would be it would go in your phones. It it would use LLMs as its resources. It could use any LLM as a resource, so long as we can get into the source code. We have to get in the source code, but there are increasingly more LLMs that are open source, and so right now it's using DeepSeek, but we intend to move to because the DoD in part a US based code. So anyway, so that's the idea. When will the PCM be available for general public? I think that, I mean, I will tell you right now, it works today. It works as I described it, which is really cool. Before we put it in front of the general public, And we have a process that we're talking about, and I don't want to say this is what we're going to absolutely do because we got to prove it and everything internally. But we think, all right, let's roll it out to the staff we have, our people internally, get them to check it out for 30 days, and then roll it out to our investor group because I think the investors have an interest in getting into this thing. It would go out probably, it was called an alpha as opposed to a beta, maybe a beta, but I would guess an alpha. And then you could check, you could test it out and say and tell us, okay, that broke or that seems stupid or whatever. And then we fix things and we make tweaks and change things. You got to remember though, we don't have a heck of a lot of resources devoted to it right now. We've had like 1.5 guys for the whole time. So I think one of the things that we're going to do here is we're going to put some more resource behind it. We have to. It's too important. Um, and John is asking, please clarify how AB relates to the PCM. In other words, is the PCM something that AB developed and it can't run without what AB has? Yeah, I mean, if you mean Neurpac, yes, it uses code words. And so, but that's like a core piece of it, but it's not everything. Um, and the it's pretty it's pretty great how this thing can be so efficient and use it in such a small device as your phone and actually have a fully functional Gen AI in a phone. That's pretty incredible. But that rests on the concept of code words. Um, and Kai, um, Genius by versus AI. I've heard of this. I'm sure our guys know about it. But I will, I'm not the expert here, so I'm not going to tell you, I know all about it. I don't, but I will ask people about it, and I can't tell you I know the answer, but I will absolutely find out, what's up with it. And sounds interesting. I mean, but okay, Paul, any more questions? We only have a couple minutes left.
Yeah, just one more question, then we can wrap it up, and it's related to the name change. Would you mind just elaborating on that a little bit more? Was it, a patent conflict, or is it
No,
just related to just the software functionality?
I mean going from LCM to PCM. Yeah, it's because, the LCM really only contemplated the substitution of code words for for language. And this is bigger than that. It uses that, but it expands on it because it's about cognitive thought. It's about changing how the whole structure of Gen AI works so that it's a lot more useful to the average person. That's why you know, that's why we think that this could be a huge deal. Um, and so we didn't want to call it the same thing because it expresses, a much more important idea. So really, really, really quick, because I gotta, we have to cut it off pretty close to the hour. Um, so are there plans for an IPO yet? Not yet. We're too early. You got to do that right. You got to do it when it's ready. Need the market to SOCOM? Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Um, it, there's um, so if Mark, if you want to uh, write me at charles.yeomans at atombeamtech.com, I would be welcome, any help with SOCOM. I can tell you we have great inroads to the Navy and great inroads to Air Force and pretty good in the Space Force. But, so-so with Army and really SOCOM is such a great that is absolutely what we should be doing. But we really haven't had the right contacts there. So if you could help, bring it. So, all right.
Thanks,
Any,
Charles. Thank you, everyone. I think we're gonna wrap it up. If your question wasn't addressed, please reach out.
Yep.
And
We'll post it on the discussion section of
yeah, we'll post on the discussion. The session was
the Start
recorded,
Engine site.
so
Yep.
look out. We'll do a follow-up email with the recording if you want to take another look at it. But have a great day, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yep. And really quick, so this will get posted on the our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we don't pester you or anything. Just, you'll get a notice whenever we post something. That's what happens. So it's not a pain in the butt. So, all right. So have a great week, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Take care, Bill. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Bill. Bye.